They charged me HOA fees on my own ranch. Then I pulled the records. I came back after 6 years expecting dust, silence, and my land right where I left it. Instead, I found 14 houses sitting on it like I never existed, and a woman telling me I was trespassing. That's when I knew this wasn't confusion. Someone moved the line and built a whole story on top of it. Stay with me, because what I uncovered next changed everything. If you believe in standing your ground the right way, hit subscribe and walk this one with me. I hadn't seen the ranch in 6 years. 6 years of pipeline contracts, long rotations, and places where the ground never stayed still long enough to trust. But this land, my land, had always been different. It didn't move. It didn't change. It waited. That's what I was expecting when I turned off Highway 26 and took the old dirt road north. Dust kicked up behind my pickup in a slow, familiar trail. The same dry earth, the same fence line running crooked along the ridge, the same wide sky that didn't belong to anyone but felt like it belonged to me anyway. I rolled the window down halfway and let the air in. Sagebrush, heat, quiet. That was the whole reason I bought the place. No neighbors close enough to see your lights at night. No committees telling you what color your roof should be. No HOA letters in the mailbox reminding you how to live on land you paid for. Just space. 3,200 acres of it, passed down through one careful hand at a time until it reached mine. My grandfather used to say land like this didn't forgive mistakes, but it remembered respect. I respected it enough to leave it alone when I had to. That's what I told myself when I drove away 6 years ago. The taxes were set to autopay. Insurance active. Boundaries surveyed twice. I didn't abandon it. I secured it. And now I was back to take it over again. The road dipped just past the old cattle gate, and that's where something felt wrong. At first, it was just a break in the horizon. Too straight. Too clean. I eased off the gas. The truck rolled forward another 100 yards before I saw it clearly. A roofline. Then another. Then more. I came to a full stop in the middle of the road, engine idling low, dust drifting past the hood, like it didn't notice anything had changed. But everything had. 14 houses, not trailers, not temporary structures. Full builds, stucco walls, shingled roofs, glass windows catching sunlight like they belonged there. Driveways cut into the dirt. Landscaping pushed into ground I knew had been bare. They weren't near my land. They were on it. I didn't move for a long second. Didn't reach for my phone. Didn't check a map. I didn't need to. I knew this stretch of land better than I knew most people. I'd walked it on foot with a GPS unit when I bought it. Marked the eastern boundary near an old oak that leaned just enough to stand out against everything else. Those houses? They were well past that line. I killed the engine. The silence came back, but it wasn't the same silence I remembered. This one had weight to it, like something had been layered over the land that didn't belong. I stepped out of the truck slowly, boots hitting the dirt with a dull, grounded sound. The air felt different standing there, tighter, like the land was holding its breath. I walked a few steps forward, eyes scanning the layout. Gravel drives, mailboxes, a paved section of road that cut clean through what used to be open ground. They didn't just build houses, they built a neighborhood. A door opened on the closest house. A woman stepped out, mid-50s maybe. Short hair set tight like it hadn't moved in years. Sunglasses on even though the light wasn't harsh. She didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, she looked like she'd been expecting someone. She walked down the driveway with measured steps, arms crossed before she even reached the edge. "You can't park there," she said. Her voice carried without effort. Not loud, just certain. I didn't answer right away. I looked past her at the house again. Clean lines, fresh construction, a flower bed laid out near the porch like it had always been there. Then I looked back at her. "I'm not parked," I said. "I just got here." She shook her head once, like she'd already decided the outcome. "This is private property," she said. "Residents only." I almost smiled at that. Almost. "I am the property," I said. That made her pause, but only for a fraction of a second. Then the smile came. Tight. Practiced. "No," she said. "You're not." I glanced back toward the truck, then down the road behind me. No gates, no signage, nothing that said anything had changed except what was standing in front of me. "I've owned this land for over a decade," I said. "This parcel," I gestured out toward the houses, "is mine." She let out a small breath through her nose. Not quite a laugh. "That's not correct," she said. "You're in Red Mesa Estates." The name hung in the air like it was supposed to mean something. It didn't. "I'm not part of any estate," I said, "and I'm not part of any HOA." Her smile didn't move. "You are now." There it was, HOA. I hadn't heard that word in years, not since I left the last place that thought it had a say over land it didn't own. I took a slow step forward. She didn't move. "Who are you?" I asked. She lifted her chin slightly. "Diane Whitaker," she said, "President of the Homeowners Association." Of course she was. I nodded once, more to myself than to her. "Caleb Turner," I said, "owner of this land." Her expression didn't change. "Then you'll want to take that up with the association," she said, "because right now you're trespassing." The word landed harder than it should have, not because it scared me, because she believed it. I looked past her again. 14 houses, driveways, people moving behind windows like this was just another warm afternoon. No hesitation, no confusion. They were settled, comfortable, like they'd never expected anyone to question it. I took another breath, steady, controlled. "You built on this land," I said, "without permission." She tilted her head slightly. "The community expanded," she said. "Boundaries were updated." "By who?" She hesitated. "Just enough." "The county," she said. "That was the first crack. Small, but it was there. I didn't push it. Not yet." Instead, I turned slightly and looked down the road again, tracing the line in my head. The oak tree should have been just beyond that rise, the eastern marker. If that tree was where I remembered it, then everything past it. I looked back at the houses. Everything past it was mine. I faced her again. "When were these built?" I asked. "About 3 years ago," she said, "right in the middle of my absence." I nodded slowly. "And nobody thought to check ownership?" Her smile thinned. "The land was vacant," she said, "unmaintained. It was owned." "Ownership is complicated," she replied. "No, it wasn't. Not here, not with land like this." I let the silence stretch between us. Wind moved through the sage behind me, dry and steady, like it always had. Nothing about this place had changed, except the people standing on it. I took one last look at the houses, at the concrete cut into dirt that had never asked for it, at the way everything sat just a little too comfortably where it didn't belong. Then I looked back at Diane Whitaker. "You're wrong," I said. She didn't flinch. "We'll see," she replied. I turned and walked back toward my truck without another word. Didn't argue. Didn't pull out paperwork. Didn't raise my voice because this wasn't the kind of thing you settled in a driveway. This was a claim, and claims don't get resolved by talking. They get proven. I opened the truck door and paused, hand on the frame, looking out one more time over land that hadn't moved an inch, but somehow had been taken anyway. 14 houses, one HOA, and a woman who thought authority meant ownership. I slid into the driver's seat and shut the door. The engine turned over, low and steady. As I pulled forward, dust rising again behind me, one question stayed locked in my head. How did they think they could get away with building an entire neighborhood on land that was never theirs? And more importantly, who gave them the confidence to try? I didn't drive far, just enough to clear the houses and get back to where the land felt like mine again. The dirt road narrowed, the fence line straightened out, and the noise, whatever quiet noise a neighborhood carries, fell away behind me. I parked near the old cabin. It was still there, exactly how I left it. Weathered wood, metal roof, one window facing east. No damage, no signs of forced entry. No one had tried to take that part. That told me something. They didn't take the land by force. They took it by assumption. I stepped inside, dropped my keys on the same table I'd used years ago, and pulled my bag open. The folder was exactly where I left it. Wrapped, sealed, untouched. Deed, survey, tax records. I didn't open it yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and checked the signal. Weak, but enough. Then I waited. It didn't take long. The sound of tires on gravel came in low and steady, growing louder until it stopped just outside. A car door opened, closed, measured steps. I didn't move from the doorway when Diane Whitaker walked into view. She didn't knock, just stood there. Hands relaxed this time, sunglasses still on, like she was walking into a meeting she'd already scheduled. "I thought you might come back here," she said. "I live here," I replied. She gave a small nod like she was acknowledging a technicality. "For now," she said. There it was again. That confidence. Not aggressive, not loud, just settled. Like the outcome had already been decided somewhere I hadn't been. "What do you want?" I asked. "To clarify things," she said. "Before this turns into something unnecessary." I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my voice level. "Seems like it already has." She reached into a leather folder she'd brought with her and pulled out a single sheet. Paper. Clean. Printed. She held it out, but didn't step closer. "You should read this," she said. I didn't take it. "Tell me what it says." Her mouth tightened slightly, but she adjusted. "It's an updated parcel map," she said. "Filed 3 years ago when Red Mesa Estates expanded. Your original boundary has been realigned to reflect community development. Realigned." I let that word sit. "And the county approved this?" I asked. "Yes." No hesitation this time. Too clean. I stepped forward, took the paper from her hand, and glanced down. At first glance, it looked legitimate. Grid lines, parcel numbers, labels that matched what you'd expect from something official. But the eastern boundary, it was off. Not dramatically. Not enough for someone unfamiliar to catch. But I knew that line. I'd walked it, measured it, stood on it, and on this version, it had been pushed inward. Just enough to swallow the ground where those houses now sat. I looked up at her. "This isn't my survey." "It's the current one," she said. "No," I replied. "It's your version." Her smile came back, thin and patient. "Mr. Turner, these things get updated all the time. Development requires adjustments. coordination with planning departments. It's not unusual. For land that belongs to the developer, I said. Not for land that's already owned. She shifted her weight slightly. The land was unoccupied, she said. No structures. No activity. It was considered available for integration. It was never available, I said. It was mine. She exhaled slowly, like she was explaining something simple to someone refusing to understand it. You weren't here, she said. That doesn't change ownership. It changes perception. There it was. Not law. Perception. I folded the paper once and handed it back to her. You built 14 houses based on perception? She didn't flinch. We built a community, she said, with permits, with approvals, with infrastructure that benefits the entire area, on land that wasn't yours. She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she reached back into her folder and pulled out a second document. Thicker, stamped. This, she said, is a notice of compliance. I didn't take it this time. Meaning, she said, that if you intend to remain here, you'll need to bring your property into alignment with HOA regulations. I let out a quiet breath. And if I don't? Her tone didn't change. Then we escalate. I looked at her for a long second. Escalate how? Fines, she said. Penalties. Legal action if necessary. For what? Unauthorized access, she replied. Trespassing. Non-compliance with community standards. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Because she wasn't joking. You're telling me, I said slowly, that I'm trespassing on land I own. That's correct, she said. According to our records. Our records, not the county's, not mine, theirs. I stepped back into the cabin and grabbed the folder from the table, walked back out, and held it up just enough for her to see. This is the deed, I said. Recorded, filed, paid for every year. She glanced at it, then looked back at me. That document is outdated, she said. I felt something shift then. Not anger. Clarity. Because that wasn't confusion. That was dismissal. You didn't verify ownership before building, I said. We verified what we needed to, she replied. Through who? The appropriate channels. I took a step closer. Name one. For the first time, she hesitated. Just long enough. Then she recovered. The county, she said again. Same answer, same tone, same gap behind it. I nodded once. All right. She blinked, not expecting that. That's it? She asked. For now. She studied me for a second, like she was trying to figure out where the resistance was hiding. You have 30 days, she said, to bring everything into compliance. After that, enforcement begins. Send whatever you think applies, I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You're making this more difficult than it needs to be. I met her gaze. No, I said. You already did that. Silence hung there between us for a moment. Then she turned and walked back toward her car, the conversation ending the same way it started, with her assuming control. But something had changed. Not for her. For me. Because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. A system. One that had been built around a version of the truth that worked, as long as nobody checked it. I watched her drive away, dust trailing behind her tires, fading into the same road I'd come in on. Then I went back inside, set the folder on the table, and opened it. Deed. Original survey. tax receipts going back over a decade. Every line clean, every boundary fixed, every record consistent. Nothing had moved, which meant one thing. They didn't change the land. They changed the story. And stories only hold up until someone starts asking the right questions. I pulled out my laptop, powered it on, and connected to the county database. If they were right, if anything had actually been updated, it would be there. And if it wasn't, then everything they built was standing on something a lot weaker than concrete. I logged in, pulled up my parcel, and waited for the truth to load. The screen flickered once, then settled. Parcel YD, Turner, Caleb, status, active, acreage, 3,200, boundary, unchanged. I stared at it for a second longer than I needed to. No adjustments, no amendments, no realignment. Nothing filed 3 years ago, nothing filed at all. Just the same lines I'd walked years back. I leaned back in the chair and let that sink in. If the county hadn't moved the boundary, then Diane hadn't followed it. She'd replaced it. I pulled up the recorded plat next, zoomed in, then opened the GIS overlay side by side. Same lines, same coordinates, no drift, no encroachment recorded. On paper, my land was exactly where it had always been, which meant everything sitting on top of it, those 14 houses, that paved road, that entire HOA, didn't exist where they thought it did. I reached for the folder on the table and spread the documents out again. Deed, survey, tax receipts, clean, consistent, quietly correct. Outside, I could still hear distant movement from the direction of the houses. Doors, voices, engines, a community running on a version of reality that hadn't been checked yet. I closed the laptop halfway and sat there for a minute. Then I stood up and went to the cabinet above the sink. The lockbox was still there. Small, metal. Nothing special unless you knew why it mattered. I opened it, reached inside, and pulled out a stack of memory cards. Trail cameras. I hadn't checked them in years. Didn't need to until now. I picked one at random and slid it into the laptop. Files loaded slowly. Weeks, months, years of nothing important. Wind through brush, shadows moving, the occasional animal crossing through frame. Then I scrolled. Back. Further. Until I hit the window that mattered. 3 years ago. The first clip opened. Daylight. Same stretch of land where the houses now stood. Empty. Flat. Untouched. Then a truck rolled into frame. Not mine. Construction grade. White body. Company logo too small to read from the angle. It stopped right near the eastern line. A man stepped out, then another. They walked the ground like they were measuring something. Not guessing. Measuring. I leaned forward slightly. The second clip loaded automatically. Same spot. A week later. More trucks this time. Stakes in the ground. Markers set at intervals that didn't match anything I recognized. Then a third clip, and that's where she showed up. Diane Whitaker. Same posture. Same controlled movement. No hesitation. She walked into frame with a clipboard and pointed directly toward the open dirt where one of the houses now stood. I turned the volume up. "Right here," she said. The audio crackled, then cleared just enough. "That's not what the original survey shows," one of the men replied. Diane didn't look at him. "That's not the survey we're using," she said. I paused the video. "Let that line sit." Then I rewound it and played it again. Same words. Same tone. Not confusion. Instruction. I leaned back slowly. They didn't misread a map. They chose a different one. The next clip loaded. Same group. Different day. One of the men was holding a set of plans, rolled tight under his arm. "I thought ownership was confirmed," he said. Diane shook her head slightly, like she was brushing off something minor. "He's not around," she said. "And even if he comes back, we'll handle it." "How?" the man asked. She smiled. "I'll deal with it." The clip ended there. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just confidence. The kind that doesn't come from being right. The kind that comes from thinking nobody's going to check. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the frozen frame. Then I closed the video and pulled the card out. Set it down next to the deed. Two pieces of the same story. One written in ink, the other recorded in motion. Neither one matching what she'd told me. I grabbed another card and loaded it. More footage. More days. Construction starting. Dirt moving. Foundations poured. Not hidden, not rushed. Deliberate. And all of it. Every frame. Sitting squarely on land that had never changed hands. I shut the laptop and stood up. The cabin felt smaller now. Not because anything inside it had changed, because everything outside had. I stepped out onto the porch and looked toward the eastern ridge. From here, I couldn't see the houses directly, just the top edges where roofs cut into the horizon. But I didn't need to see them. I knew exactly where they were. And now I knew exactly how they got there. Not by accident. Not by oversight. By decision. A calculated one. I walked down the steps and out toward the old oak tree. It was still there, leaning slightly east, just like I remembered. Roots exposed. Bark worn from years of wind. I placed my hand against it and looked past it toward where the first house would be. This was the marker. This was the line. And everything beyond it didn't belong to them. I took a step forward, then another, crossing into the space where their version of the boundary began. The ground didn't feel different. Same dirt, same weight under my boots. But now there was a structure ahead. Concrete, walls, something permanent sitting where nothing had ever been allowed to stay. I stopped a few yards short of the nearest driveway. Didn't step onto it. Didn't need to. Because the question wasn't whether I could walk in. The question was whether they had the right to build at all. Behind me, the wind shifted, carried a faint sound of movement from the houses. Life going on. Unaware. Or pretending to be. I turned back toward the cabin. Because now I had enough to move forward. Not to argue. Not to convince. To prove. Back inside, I opened the laptop again and pulled up the county records one more time. Then I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was a name I hadn't called in a long time. Luke Morrison, surveyor. The kind who didn't guess. The kind who didn't adjust lines to fit a story. I hit dial. He picked up on the third ring. "Yeah?" "It's Caleb Turner," I said. A pause. Then, "Didn't think I'd hear from you again." "I need a line checked," I said. Another pause. "Serious?" 14 houses serious. Silence on the other end. Then a quiet exhale. "Send me the coordinates," he said. "I'll be there in the morning." I ended the call and set the phone down. Then I looked back at the documents spread across the table. Deed, survey, footage, 3 versions of the same truth. Only one of them had been ignored. That was about to change. I closed the laptop and sat down, because for the first time since I got back, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. And once this moved forward, there wouldn't be any confusion left to hide behind. Luke Morrison showed up just after sunrise. Same truck I remembered. Same quiet way of stepping out like he didn't need to announce himself to anything. He looked at me once, nodded, then turned his attention past me, toward the eastern ridge. He didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. "You weren't exaggerating," he said. "No," I replied. "I wasn't. We didn't waste time." Luke unloaded his equipment with the kind of efficiency that comes from doing the same job for decades. Tripod, receiver, calibration checks. Everything set with precision that didn't leave room for interpretation. We started at the cabin, baseline first, known point, confirmed coordinates. Then we moved outward. I walked with him along the line I knew by memory. The fence post that leaned just enough to stand out. The shallow dip in the land where rainwater always pooled. The oak tree marking the eastern boundary. Luke logged everything. Didn't comment. Didn't speculate. Just measured. That's how you keep truth clean. By the time the drone went up, the sun had cleared the ridge. Light flattened the ground, stripped shadows down to nothing. On Luke's tablet, the land started to build itself in layers. County GIS recorded plat, live aerial feed, all stacking over each other, matching, until they didn't. Luke zoomed in slowly. "Right there," he said. I stepped closer. The line cut clean through the edge of the nearest property, not grazing it, not brushing past it, cutting through it. Back corner of a garage, half a patio, a section of the house itself sitting squarely over it. Luke adjusted the overlay again, zoomed out, then back in. Same result. "Try a different reference," I said. He already had. Switched coordinate points, recalibrated against another marker. Ran the data again. The line didn't move, because it wasn't wrong. They were. "How far?" I asked. Luke studied the screen. "Depends on the structure," he said. "But the worst one," he tapped the tablet lightly, "you're looking at about 70, maybe 80 feet. Feet, not inches, not a rounding error, a decision." I let that sit. "Any record of an easement?" I asked. Luke shook his head. "Not in the county files," he said. "Not in anything I pulled before coming out." "What about permits?" He gave a short exhale. "Permits exist," he said, "but they're tied to a boundary file that doesn't match the recorded one." "Meaning?" "Meaning they built off something that isn't officially recognized anymore. Maybe never was." I looked back at the house. Concrete foundation. Clean edges. Someone had invested money into making that permanent, and they'd done it standing on a line that didn't belong to them. Luke lowered the tablet and looked at me. "This isn't a survey error," he said. I nodded. "I know." We walked closer to the nearest structure. Didn't step onto the driveway. Didn't need to. The boundary ran just before it. Luke set his equipment again, took a precise reading, then walked a few feet to the side and did it again. 2 points. Same result. He stood up straight and wiped his hands on his jeans. "They crossed it," he said. "Clear as it gets." I didn't say anything. Didn't need confirmation. But hearing it out loud changed the weight of it. Because now it wasn't just something I knew. It was something that could be proven. Luke walked back to the truck, reached inside and pulled out a bundle of bright survey stakes. Neon orange. Impossible to ignore. He handed one to me. "Your call," he said. I looked at the stake, then at the ground where the line cut through. "This is where it sits," I said. He nodded once, then drove the first stake into the dirt himself, hard. Metal head of the hammer hitting clean, sharp strikes that echoed off the side of the house. 1 hit, 2, 3. The stake went in deep, standing straight, bright against the muted earth, right at the edge of their landscaping, right where the lie ended. Luke stepped back. "Let's mark the rest," he said. We worked down the line, placing markers every few yards, each one cutting through something that had been treated like it was settled. Driveway edges, grass patches, a section of decorative stone that stopped abruptly at the boundary. With every stake, the line became harder to ignore, harder to explain away. By the time we finished, the eastern side of the HOA didn't look like a clean development anymore. It looked divided, half on one side, half on the other. I stood there, looking at the nearest house again. Now it didn't just feel wrong. It looked wrong. Because the truth had been made visible. Luke packed up his equipment slowly, then handed me a flash drive. "Everything's on here," he said. "Survey data, coordinates, drone overlays, signed and certified." I took it. "Good enough for court?" I asked. He met my eyes. "More than enough." We stood there for a second longer. Then he added, "They knew." I looked at him. "You don't push that far over a line by accident," he said. "Not with this kind of layout." "Someone made that call." I nodded. "I've got footage," I said, "of when they did." That made him pause. Then he gave a short, knowing nod. "Then you're not dealing with a mistake," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm not." He climbed into his truck and started the engine. "Call me if you need anything else," he said. "I will." He pulled away, leaving the stakes behind, leaving the line exposed. I stayed where I was, looking at the house, looking at where concrete crossed into something it didn't own. And for the first time since I got back, I saw the problem clearly. Not as a question, not as a dispute, as a liability. For them. Because everything they'd built, every wall, every room, every foundation, was now sitting on something that could be taken away. I turned and walked back toward the cabin. Didn't rush. Didn't look back again. Because the next move wasn't out here. It was on paper. Back inside, I set the flash drive next to the deed and opened my laptop. Pulled up the county records again. Then opened a new file. Started building a timeline. Original ownership. Unchanged boundary. Unauthorized construction. Survey confirmation. Evidence. Every piece lining up in order. Not for me. For whoever needed to see it next. I picked up my phone and scrolled to another name. Rachel Mercer, attorney. I hadn't talked to her in years, but she was the kind of person who didn't waste time when things were clear. I hit dial. She answered on the second ring. Rachel Mercer. "It's Caleb Turner," I said. A brief pause. Then, "I was wondering when you'd call." "I've got a situation," I said. "Land. 14 houses on it." Silence. Then a low, controlled breath. "Send me everything," she said. "I will." I ended the call and sat back in the chair. The pieces were no longer scattered. They were aligned, and for the first time since I got back, the pressure shifted. Because this wasn't about proving what was mine anymore. That part was done. Now it was about deciding what to do with what they'd built on top of it. And that decision was going to cost someone. The only question left was, how much? The answer started showing up before I even got one from Rachel. It came just after midnight. I woke up to a sound that didn't belong. Plastic dragging across dirt. Not wind, not animals. Something heavier. Intentional. I didn't turn on the lights, just reached for my phone, opened the camera feed, and pulled up the nearest trail cam covering the eastern boundary. The timestamp read 2:41 a.m. A figure moved into frame, hood up, gloves on, carrying something bulky over one shoulder. He walked straight to the edge of my property, right near one of the orange stakes, and dropped it. Then another, and another. Black trash bags. He split one open with his boot, garbage spilled out onto the dirt, food waste, broken containers, something liquid leaking into the soil. He didn't look around much, didn't act like he was worried about being caught. Just finished the job and walked back the way he came, toward the houses. I saved the clip, didn't react, didn't step outside. Because by the time something like that shows up, it's already part of a plan. At 7:12 a.m., the email came in. Subject line, urgent sanitation violation. Ender. Red Mesa Estates, HOA opened it and read it once. Then again, according to the message, multiple residents had reported hazardous waste conditions on my property. Health concerns, environmental risk, immediate remediation required. Failure to comply would result in escalation to county authorities. I stared at the screen for a second. Then I forwarded the email to Rachel, followed by the video. My phone rang less than 5 minutes later. "You didn't respond to them, did you?" she asked. "No." "Good," she said, "because that's not enforcement. That's setup." I figured. "You file a report," she said. "Document everything. Don't touch the trash. Don't clean it. Let it sit exactly where they put it." I already saved the footage. "Send it to the sheriff's office," she said. "And Caleb?" "Yeah?" "They're escalating." I ended the call and grabbed my keys. The trash was still there when I stepped outside. 3 bags, torn open, flies already gathering. It didn't belong on this land. That part was obvious. What mattered was who put it there. I didn't go near it. Just walked the perimeter, checked the stakes, confirmed nothing had been moved overnight. Then I got in the truck and headed toward town. The sheriff's office sat quiet, same as always. No rush, no urgency. Just a building that handled things when they crossed a line. I stepped inside, handed the clerk my ID, and asked to file an incident report. Illegal dumping, trespassing. When I mentioned video evidence, she picked up the phone and called someone in the back. Sheriff Cole Bennett came out a minute later. Mid-50s, steady eyes, the kind of man who didn't ask unnecessary questions. "Caleb Turner," he said, recognizing the name. "Heard you were back." "Didn't expect to be filing reports this soon," I said. He nodded once. "Let's take a look." We stepped into his office and I pulled up the footage. He watched it without interrupting. Watched the man walk in. Drop the bags, split them open. Watched him leave. When it ended, he leaned back slightly. "You know him?" he asked. "Not personally." "You will," he said. He picked up the phone and made a call. Quiet, direct, no wasted words. Then he hung up and looked back at me. "We'll bring him in," he said. "See who paid him." I nodded. "That's all I need." "Not quite," he said. "This kind of thing doesn't happen by accident." "I know." He studied me for a second. "You looking to escalate this?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm documenting it." That seemed to settle something. "Good," he said, "because once it escalates, it won't be quiet." I left the office with a case number and a copy of the report. By the time I got back to the ranch, another notice was waiting. This one taped to the cabin door. Bright paper, bold font. Violation, unregistered animal. Lee stared at it for a second, then looked down at the ground. My dog, old, slow-moving, half asleep most of the day, lifted his head just enough to look at me, then dropped it again. Noise complaint. Safety concern. Breed not approved under community guidelines. I pulled the paper off the door and folded it once. They weren't trying to enforce anything. They were stacking pressure. I went inside, set both notices on the table next to the deed, and added them to the file. Because patterns matter. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. Sheriff Bennett. We picked him up, he said. That was fast. He didn't run, Bennett replied. Didn't think he needed to. Who sent him? There was a short pause. He says it was a cash job, Bennett said, but he described who gave it to him. I didn't ask the question. Didn't need to. Short hair? I said. Mid-50s, confident tone. Bennett let out a short breath. That's the one. I looked out toward the eastern boundary, toward the houses. She didn't think anyone was watching, I said. No, Bennett replied. She didn't. He paused. You want to press charges? Not yet. Another pause. Why not? Because she's not done, I said. And the more she does, the clearer it gets. Bennett didn't respond right away. Then just make sure you're the one writing it down. I am. I hung up and set the phone aside. By evening, things had shifted, subtle, but noticeable. A car slowed as it passed the edge of my property. Someone standing on a porch watched a little longer than they needed to. Word was moving, not publicly, but enough. I didn't respond to any of it. Didn't go over. Didn't engage. Because pressure works both ways, and right now they were the ones building it. That night I added another camera, closer to the shed. Better angle on the access path between their development and my land. If they wanted to operate in the dark, I'd make sure it wasn't invisible. I checked the stakes one more time before heading inside. All still in place. Bright. Unmoved. A line that couldn't be ignored anymore. Back in the cabin, I sat at the table and looked at everything laid out in front of me. Deed. Survey. Footage. Incident report. HOA notices. Every piece connecting to the next. Not scattered anymore. Structured. I picked up the violation notice again. Read the wording carefully. Not legal language. Not enforceable. Just confident. Like everything else they'd sent. Confidence built on the assumption that nobody would push back. I set it down and leaned back in the chair. Because now I understood something else. This wasn't about land anymore. Not just land. It was about control, narrative, pressure, and the moment someone refused to accept it, that system started to crack. I looked toward the window. The ridge beyond it sat quiet, the houses just out of view. And somewhere inside that development, Diane Whitaker was still moving pieces like she had the upper hand, still believing she could outlast this, outmaneuver it, outtalk it. But she'd already crossed a line that mattered. Not just on the ground, on record. And once something is recorded, it doesn't disappear. It accumulates. I turned back to the table and pulled a legal pad closer. Started writing. Dates, times, events. Everything documented clean. Because the next move wasn't about reacting to what she did. It was about showing exactly what she'd done. And making sure there was no way to explain it away. The pressure didn't stop. But it changed. And so did I. Because at this point, I wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was building a case. And cases don't break under pressure. They get stronger. That's what Rachel said the second time we spoke. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't sound impressed. Just matter of fact. Like she was describing weather patterns. Send me everything, she had told me the night before. I did. Survey data. Drone overlays. County records. trail camera footage, the trash incident, the HOA notices. Every piece lined up clean, time-stamped, organized. By morning, she had already gone through it. When she called back, there was no hesitation. "They don't have a leg to stand on," she said. "Legally?" I asked. "Legally, structurally, and procedurally," she replied. "They're exposed on all three fronts." I leaned back in the chair, letting that settle. "Start with the boundary," she continued. "The county records didn't change. That alone invalidates their claim. Everything built beyond that line is unauthorized encroachment." I figured. "But here's the part they're hoping you don't push," she said. "They're relying on delay." "Delay?" "They assume you'll negotiate," she said. "Maybe accept a partial adjustment. Maybe sell an easement. Something that legitimizes what they've already done." I looked at the documents spread across the table. "They're trying to turn a mistake into a settlement," I said. "They're trying to turn a violation into a negotiation," she corrected. "That's how this usually ends. And this time," she said, "we don't give them that option." There was a pause. Then she added, "We document, we notify, and we control the timeline." I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing reactive," she said. "No contact with the HOA. No verbal confrontations. No informal agreements. That won't be a problem." "I figured," she said. "You've been quiet so far. That's working in your favor." I looked out the window toward the ridge. "They think I'm backing down," I said. "Good," she replied. "Let them." The call ended with a plan in place. Not aggressive, precise. By noon, the first letter was drafted. Formal notice of encroachment, addressed to Red Mesa Estates, HOA, copied to Diane Whitaker directly. It didn't accuse, didn't threaten. It stated, ownership confirmed, boundary verified, encroachment documented, immediate cessation of unauthorized use required, attached exhibits, survey, county plat, coordinates, no emotion, just fact. Rachel sent it certified. Then she prepared a second document. Cease and desist, this one broader. No further enforcement actions, no additional notices, no contact regarding HOA compliance until the boundary dispute was resolved through proper legal channels. Once this lands, she said, they're on record. Meaning? Meaning everything they do after this point is no longer a mistake, she said. It's willful. That mattered. Because willful behavior carries consequences. I spent the rest of the afternoon organizing the rest of the file. Every incident logged. Every timestamp matched. Because Rachel was right about one thing. This wasn't about reacting anymore. It was about controlling what came next. Late in the day, I drove back toward the eastern boundary. Didn't cross it. Just stopped at the line and watched. A couple of residents were outside now, talking, looking. One of them pointed toward the stakes. Another shook his head. Confusion. Not hostility, not yet. That told me something. They didn't all know. Diane had built a narrative inside that development. But narratives don't always reach everyone the same way, especially when something visible contradicts it. One of the residents noticed my truck, looked over, hesitated, then gave a small nod. I nodded back. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Because this wasn't about them. Not yet. This was still between me and the person who decided those houses belonged there. I drove back to the cabin before sunset, parked in the same spot, same angle. Routine matters when everything else shifts, Inside, my laptop was still open. Email inbox refreshed automatically. 2 new messages. One from the HOA, one from an unknown sender. I opened the HOA email first. Subject: response to notice short. Careful. They acknowledged receipt of the letter, stated that they were reviewing the claims, emphasized their position that the development was properly authorized. No denial, no detail, just distance, which meant they were adjusting. The second email was different. No subject line, just a forwarded message. Internal HOA communication. I recognized Diane's tone immediately. Situation is being handled. Do not engage directly. Refer all inquiries to the board, followed by another line. Boundary discrepancies are under review. No action required from residents at this time. I read it twice, then checked the sender. No name, just a private address. Someone inside, watching. That was new, because now the narrative wasn't holding. I closed the email and leaned back in the chair, because that was the first real shift. Not legal, not structural, social. The people inside that development were starting to question what they'd been told. And once that starts, it doesn't stop. I grabbed the legal pad and added a new section. Internal fracture. Because that's what it was. Small, but growing. I didn't respond to the email, didn't acknowledge it, because information like that, you don't disturb it. You let it come to you. Outside, the light dropped low across the ridge. The stakes still stood where we placed them, bright, unmoved, a line that no longer depended on belief, only on proof. I looked at the documents one more time. Everything aligned, everything clean. And for the first time since I got back, there was no uncertainty left, not about the land, not about the boundary, not about what needed to happen next. Because now, it wasn't just about what they'd done. It was about what they couldn't undo. And the more they tried, the worse it was going to get for them. I shut the laptop and stood up, because the next move wasn't mine. It was theirs, and whatever they chose would decide how this ended. They didn't wait long. The next morning, I heard engines again. Not just one this time. 2 trucks, maybe 3, rolling slow across the dirt toward the eastern side. Not construction pace, not aggressive, cautious. I stepped outside and walked down toward the line. Didn't cross it, didn't need to. They stopped just short of the stakes. 3 men stepped out. Not Diane. Different faces. Work boots. One of them carried a clipboard, flipping through pages like he was trying to match what he saw to something he'd been told. None of them stepped over the line. That was new. One of them noticed me and raised a hand halfway, unsure whether to wave or not. I nodded once. He walked a few steps closer, stopping just on their side of the boundary. "You the owner?" he asked. "I am." He glanced back at the houses, then at the stakes again. "They're saying there's a dispute," he said. "There isn't," I replied. "There's a boundary." He gave a short breath through his nose, like that answer made more sense than the one he'd been given. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's what it looks like." The other 2 stayed back, watching, measuring without equipment, trying to understand what had shifted overnight. The man with the clipboard hesitated, then asked the question that mattered. "If this line holds," he said, "what happens to the houses?" I looked past him at the structures behind. "Depends," I said, "on how far they crossed." He nodded slowly. Didn't push. Didn't argue. Because at that point, the truth wasn't abstract anymore. It was painted into the ground. They left without stepping over, didn't touch anything, didn't challenge it. And that told me more than anything they could have said. Because people don't hesitate like that unless something underneath them just shifted. By midday, Rachel called. They got the notice, she said. I figured. They didn't respond directly, she added. Their attorney did. What's the tone? Careful, she said. They're not denying the boundary anymore. That was fast. What are they saying? They're requesting time to review documentation, claiming potential discrepancies in historical survey data. I let out a short breath. So they're stalling. They're repositioning, she corrected. Big difference. How? They're trying to avoid admitting fault while figuring out how exposed they are. That tracked. They're also asking if you're open to discussing access, she added. That made me pause. Access to what? The development, she said. Utilities, road use, entry points. I looked toward the ridge again, toward the direction the trucks had come from. Then it clicked. Not the houses. The road. I stepped off the porch and walked down toward the path that connected my side of the land to theirs. I hadn't paid attention to it before. Didn't need to. But now I did. The paved section cut straight across the boundary. Clean. Deliberate. It didn't just connect their houses to each other. It connected them to the outside world. And it ran right through my land. I followed it with my eyes, back toward the main access point, toward the road I came in on. And suddenly, everything lined up. I pulled the laptop open again, brought up the GIS overlay, and traced the route. Parcel lines lit up clearly. The road didn't just touch my land, it depended on it. Every single one of those 14 houses used that stretch to get in and out. Without it, they were landlocked. I picked up the phone. Rachel, I said. I'm here. The road, I said. It's mine. There was a pause on the other end. Then, show me. I turned the laptop toward the window, angled it so I could describe what I was seeing. Coordinates, overlay, connection points. She didn't interrupt, just listened. Then, send me the file. I did. 30 seconds later, she was back. Jesus, she said quietly. Yeah. They built an entire access route through your parcel, she said. No recorded easement, no right-of-way. What does that mean? It means, she said, they don't just have a boundary problem. They have an access problem. And without that road? I asked. They don't legally have entry or exit, she said. Not for residents, not for utilities, not for emergency services. I looked back out toward the houses. Suddenly, they didn't look stable anymore. They looked dependent. Rachel, I said, if I block that road. You don't, she cut in. Not yet. Why not? Because right now you don't need to, she said. They just realized it. I thought back to the men that morning, the hesitation, the distance they kept. They're already reacting, she continued, which means the leverage is yours. I let that sit, because she was right. This wasn't about force. It was about position. And right now they were standing on something they didn't control. What's the move? I asked. We notify, she said, formally, that the road constitutes unauthorized use of private land, that continued access is contingent on legal resolution. Contingent, I repeated. Exactly, she said. We don't shut them down. We let them understand they could be. That was better, because pressure doesn't always come from action. Sometimes it comes from what you don't do. I stepped back from the window. Send it, I said. Already drafting. The call ended. I stood there for a moment longer, then walked back outside. The land hadn't changed. Same dirt, same lines, same silence underneath everything. But the balance had. Because up until now, they thought they had something permanent. Now they knew it all ran through me. I walked down to the boundary again and looked along the road. No movement this time, no trucks, just empty pavement cutting through land it didn't belong to. For the first time since I got back, I wasn't standing on defense. I was standing on control, and they knew it. Because the moment someone realizes they don't own the ground they're standing on, everything changes, especially when they built their lives on top of it. I turned and headed back to the cabin. Because now, the next move wasn't about proving anything. It was about deciding how much they were willing to lose to keep pretending they were right. Rachel sent the notice out before noon. Clear, direct, no excess language, unauthorized use of private land, no recorded easement, continued access contingent on legal resolution. It didn't threaten to block the road. It didn't need to, because anyone reading it understood what it meant. I didn't go out to watch their reaction, didn't drive over, didn't check from the ridge. I stayed inside and let the message do what it was supposed to do. By mid-afternoon, the first change showed up, not in writing, in movement. A delivery truck came up the access road and stopped halfway in. Driver stepped out, looked ahead, then turned around and left. Didn't risk it. 10 minutes later, another vehicle approached slower than normal. Paused near the first stake, backed up, parked on the far side. People were starting to think. That mattered more than anything I could say. My phone buzzed. Rachel, they're responding faster now, she said. Internally? And externally, she replied. Their attorney just sent a second letter. What changed? The tone, she said. Less confident. More cautious. I walked to the window and looked toward the road. What are they asking for? Clarification, she said. They want to confirm that you're not planning to restrict access immediately. I let out a quiet breath. They're worried. They should be, Rachel said. But this is where we stay controlled. No sudden moves. Exactly, she said. We don't shut the road. We don't escalate physically. We keep everything on paper. Because paper holds. Emotion doesn't. What about the HOA board? I asked. They're splitting, she said. That got my attention. How do you know? Because someone from inside reached out, she said. Not officially, but enough to confirm there's disagreement. That tracked with what I'd seen, the hesitation, the distance. Diane's still in control? I asked. For now, Rachel said. But control is slipping. I ended the call and stepped outside. The air felt the same, but the space didn't, because tension doesn't always show itself loudly. Sometimes it shifts in small ways. A car idling longer than it should, a door closing slower, people watching without stepping forward. I walked down to the boundary again. The stakes were still there. Bright. Unmoved. But now they weren't being ignored. 2 residents stood near the far side of the road, talking low, looking at the line. One of them glanced over at me. This time he didn't nod. He walked a few steps closer, stopped at the edge. You the owner? He asked. I am. He hesitated. Then, they told us this was all cleared. They were wrong, I said. He looked back at the houses behind him, then at the road. So what happens now? He asked. I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, it depended on people who weren't standing in front of me. That depends on your HOA, I said finally. He let out a breath. They're saying it's a misunderstanding. It's not, I said. He nodded slowly, then stepped back. Didn't argue. Didn't defend it. Just walked away with more questions than he came with. That's how things start to shift. Not with declarations, with doubt. By evening, the emails started circulating. I didn't receive them directly, but I didn't need to. One got forwarded again. Same anonymous sender. Internal message thread. Residents asking, is the boundary actually disputed? Why is there no easement on record? Can we legally access our homes? Questions Diane couldn't answer without breaking her own narrative. And she knew it. Because her response came through right after. Long, defensive, talking about pending review, external misinformation, temporary misunderstandings. No mention of the footage. No mention of the stakes. No mention of the road. Just words. Trying to hold something together that was already coming apart. I closed the email and set the phone down. Because at that point, it wasn't about convincing anyone. The truth was already in the ground. And now it was starting to spread. Night came without much noise. No trucks, no late movement, no one crossing the line. The road stayed quiet, which told me everything I needed to know. Because when people stop using something, they've already accepted it might not belong to them. I checked the cameras one last time before turning in. No activity, no attempts to move the stakes, no new pressure, just stillness. But it wasn't the same stillness from before. This one had weight, the kind that builds right before something breaks. Inside the cabin, I sat at the table and reviewed everything again. Deed, survey, legal notices, email threads, all of it aligned, not just legally, structurally, socially. The system Diane built was starting to turn inward, and once that happens, it doesn't stop. Because control depends on belief, and belief, once questioned, doesn't come back the same way. I leaned back in the chair and looked toward the window. The ridge was dark now, the houses just outlines against the horizon. And somewhere in there, Diane Whitaker was still trying to hold it together, still trying to keep the narrative intact, still believing she could manage this. But she couldn't. Not anymore. Because silence had done its job, and now everything was moving. The only question left was how far she was willing to push it before it all collapsed. The answer came 2 nights later. 2:18 a.m. The camera near the eastern boundary picked it up first, headlights cutting across the dark. Slow. Careful. Not a resident coming home. Wrong angle, wrong approach. I was already awake when the notification came through. Didn't rush, just opened the feed and watched. Diane stepped out of the vehicle. No hesitation. No attempt to hide it this time. She walked straight toward the line. Straight toward the stakes. A second figure followed behind her. A contractor by the look of it. Heavy boots, work jacket, carrying a small toolkit. They stopped right at the boundary, right where the neon orange stake marked the corner of her encroachment. Diane pointed directly at it. "Pull that out," she said. Her voice came through clearer than I expected. The contractor didn't move. "That's a survey marker," he said. "We're not supposed to." "Just move it," she cut in. "Shift it back a few feet. That's where it's supposed to be." The man hesitated again. "That's not what the data shows," he said. Diane stepped closer, lowering her voice, but not enough. "That's not the data we're using," she said. "Do you understand how this works?" He shifted his weight. "Uncomfortable. This could cause problems," he said. "It won't," she replied, "because nobody's going to measure it twice." Silence. Then she added, quieter, sharper, "I'll handle him." I paused the footage, sat there for a second, then played it again. Same words, same tone, no ambiguity. This wasn't interpretation. It wasn't even denial. It was instruction. Tampering. Deliberate. I saved the clip, copied it, backed it up twice. Because some moments don't just support a case, they define it. The contractor didn't touch the stake. He stepped back instead, shook his head. "I'm not doing that," he said. Diane didn't respond right away, just stared at the marker like it had personally offended her. Then she turned, walked back to the truck, and left. No damage, no movement. But that didn't matter anymore, because intent had been recorded, and intent changes everything. By morning, Rachel had the file. She didn't call immediately. She didn't need to. Her response came through email first. 3 words. "This is enough." When she did call, her tone had shifted. Less analytical, more certain. "She just crossed into criminal exposure," she said. "Because of the stake?" "Because of the instruction," Rachel replied. "Tampering with a survey marker isn't a gray area. It's a violation. And now we have it on video." I leaned back in the chair. "So what happens now?" "We escalate," she said, "but properly." That mattered, because there's a difference between reacting and advancing. "What does that look like?" I asked. "We file," she said. "Civil and potentially criminal referral, encroachment, harassment, attempted evidence interference. And the HOA? They're already backing off," she said. "This will separate them from her." I thought back to the internal emails, the hesitation, the questions. "They won't protect her," I said. "They can't," Rachel replied. "Not with this." That was the shift. Not just legal, structural. Because up until now, Diane had been the HOA. Now she was a liability to it. I stepped outside and walked down to the boundary again. The stake was still there, unmoved, bright against the dirt, exactly where it had been. But now it carried more weight, because it wasn't just marking land anymore. It was marking a decision. One she made. One she thought she could control. I looked past it toward the houses. Some curtains moved, someone watching. Word had spread again. It always does. But this time it wasn't just about land. It was about behavior. About what she'd tried to do when the truth became visible. That sticks, more than paperwork, more than arguments, because people understand lines, and they understand when someone tries to erase one. I turned back toward the cabin. Inside, the file was growing. Every document, every clip, every report, no gaps, no confusion, just a clean line from the moment I got back to now. Rachel called again later that afternoon. "Sheriff's office has the footage," she said. "That was fast. They needed to see it," she replied. "And now they have. What's their take?" "Serious," she said. "They're not treating this as a dispute anymore." That mattered, because once law enforcement stops seeing something as civil, the consequences change. "And Diane?" I asked. "She doesn't know yet," Rachel said. I nodded slowly. "She will." "Soon," Rachel replied. I ended the call and looked at the documents one more time. Everything was in place, nothing left to prove, no gaps left to fill, because at this point, the story wasn't mine to build anymore. It was hers to answer for. And the next time she stepped forward, it wouldn't be on her terms. It would be on record. I stepped outside one last time before sunset, walked to the line, looked down at the stake, then out across the land beyond it. Same ground, same boundary, same truth. Only difference now was that it had been tested, challenged, and proven. I turned back toward the cabin. Because the next step wasn't out here. It was coming from somewhere else. And when it did, it wouldn't ask questions. It would deliver answers. The call came the next morning. Sheriff Cole Bennett. "Court's moving fast on this," he said. "You'll want to be there." "I will." No extra words. Because at that point, there wasn't anything left to explain. Everything had already been said. On paper, on record, on video. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Plain walls, hard benches. No noise except the quiet shuffle of people waiting for something to be decided. Diane Whitaker sat at the defense table. For the first time since I'd seen her, she didn't look in control. No sunglasses, no rehearsed posture. Just tension sitting where confidence used to be. Her attorney did the talking. Careful language, soft tone. Framed everything as a misunderstanding. Boundary discrepancy. Reliance on outdated data. Unintentional encroachment. He built it like a mistake. Something that could be adjusted, smoothed out. Walked back. Rachel stood when it was our turn. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She just introduced the exhibits, one by one. Deed, county plat, survey report, drone overlays, each one laid out clean, uncontested. Then came the footage. The room shifted when it played. No narration, no interpretation. Just Diane's voice, clear enough for everyone to hear. "Pull that out. Shift it back. I'll handle him." The judge didn't interrupt, didn't ask for clarification, just watched. Then looked up. "Ms. Whitaker," she said, "did you instruct someone to alter a survey marker?" Diane's attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor," the judge raised a hand. "I asked your client." Silence. Diane swallowed. Then, yes. One word. That was it. No explanation. No defense. Just confirmation. The judge nodded once. "Did you obtain a recorded easement for the use of Mr. Turner's land?" "No." "Did you file for a variance regarding the encroachment?" "No." Each answer stripped something away, layer by layer, until there was nothing left to stand on. Rachel didn't push, didn't need to. The timeline spoke for itself. Unauthorized construction, fabricated boundary, harassment, attempted interference with evidence, all of it connected, all of it documented. The judge leaned back slightly. "This court does not recognize authority that exists outside of recorded ownership," she said. Her voice stayed level. Measured. Final. The boundary remains as filed. The encroachment is confirmed. The actions taken to obscure that boundary are noted. She paused, then delivered the part that mattered. An order is issued for the removal of all structures that exist beyond the legal boundary of Mr. Turner's property. The room went still. No reaction at first, just silence. Then Diane let out a sound, half breath, half collapse. Her attorney leaned in, whispering something fast. Didn't matter. The decision had already been made. The judge continued. "Failure to comply will result in enforcement through the county, with associated costs assigned to the responsible party." She looked directly at Diane. "Additionally, the attempt to alter a survey marker has been referred for further review." That was the end of it. No drama, no raised voices. Just a line drawn where it had always been, and recognized. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, just settled. Like something that had been stretched too far finally snapped back into place. Diane's attorney approached me before I left. Quiet. Controlled. She can't afford demolition, he said. I looked back toward the courthouse doors. I know. I had already thought about it. Already made the decision. I'll make an offer, I said. He nodded once. Didn't argue. Didn't try to negotiate. Because he understood what position they were in. The terms were simple. I would purchase the portion of the property that encroached. Land value only. No added cost for structures. No compensation for improvements made outside legal boundaries. In exchange, I would waive immediate demolition enforcement. One condition. Diane steps down. Public acknowledgement of the boundary violation. No appeal. No reinterpretation. No narrative left to manage. She refused at first. I heard about it later. Said it was unfair. Said it was humiliating. But numbers don't bend. And neither does recorded ownership. By the next morning, she signed. No statement. No apology. Just a signature. That was enough. A week later, the keys were mine. I didn't keep everything. Didn't need to. The sections that crossed the line, the garage, the patio, the part of the house that never belonged. They came down. Clean, precise, no anger in it, just correction. What remained, I left, not as a victory, as a reminder. I repainted the structure, changed everything the HOA would have controlled. Color, trim, details, because it wasn't about style, it was about ownership. I mounted the survey stake near the entrance, encased, visible, a simple plaque beneath it. This line did not move. People came by after that, some out of curiosity, some because they'd heard pieces of the story and wanted to see where it actually happened. I didn't charge at first. Just walked them to the boundary, showed them the line, explained how it held. Because most people don't lose land by force. They lose it by assumption, by not checking, by not pushing back. The HOA changed. New board, quieter, no letters, no notices, just distance. Diane left, no announcement, no explanation, just gone. And eventually, the land went back to what it had always been. Quiet, open, uncontested. One evening, I walked the boundary again. Same path, same markers. The oak tree still leaning east. The dirt unchanged under my boots. I stopped where the patio used to be. Ran my hand through the soil. Nothing special about it. That was the point. Because land doesn't need to prove anything. It just needs to be recognized. I turned back toward the cabin as the light dropped across the ridge. No noise. No pressure. No narrative trying to reshape what was already set. Just space, the kind I paid for, the kind I came back for, and the kind nobody was going to take again. Because the truth about land is simple. It doesn't move. People do.
That's the lesson these home things come down to. The land didn't change while I was gone. The lines didn't shift. The records didn't rewrite themselves. And the truth didn't bend just because someone says it did. What also changed was the story around it. And that's what people rely on more than they should. If a hand comes back tired, rushed, or willing to just work it out, those lines might stay blurred. Not because they were wrong, but because I didn't insist on proving they were right. There's something steady about standing your ground the right way, not loud, not aggressive, just patient, documented, and clear. That kind of approach doesn't just protect what's yours. It restores order to things that were starting to drift. I'm curious, have you ever had a situation where someone tried to tell you something was theirs when you know it wasn't? Or where the truth got buried under paperwork or pressure? If so, drop a one in the comment. If not, roll a zero. I read every one of those. And if you appreciate stories like this, real situation handled the right way, go ahead and subscribe. There's more coming, quiet story about standing firm, thinking clearly, and keeping what's made where it belongs.